was like, crypto? But how come everyone's speaking to me about crypto? Nobody knows RPC until it fails. Agents don't sleep. They don't drink coffees. They 24/7 need access. Next year, 70% of the transaction will be done by AI agents. Listen more and more to the subtext and what people don't tell you. Because at the end of the day, it's not what people telling you, it's what they're doing.
So hello and welcome, and we're here at Holistic Investments, and I'm your host, Constantin, and I'm excited to have here amazing guest, Yair Cleper, who is a co-founder of Magma Devs, and then he's also a contributor to Lava Network.
Correct, yes. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Constantin, for hosting me.
Thank you. There's a lot of fire even in your brands, and a lot of eruption in what you guys are doing. So I'm more than excited to talk about it, right?
Exactly. That's what we chose the name.
Well, traditionally, we also have to throw a legal disclaimer that this content is for informational purposes only, and you should not construe any such information or any other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. So now we are friends. Like, we know each other beyond the fact of the professional realm.
You took me all over the world, right? Everywhere in the world, I see this guy. Yeah.
4 countries. But I want the audience to learn about you, first of all, right? You started your businesses at 21. You were managing multi-billion-dollar, businesses and different, huge contracts. You were always entrepreneurial. You're also very technical. So tell us what led you to the Web3 world, to blockchain, before you even started, Magma and Lava.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I like the way you put it out. Maybe a bit more humble, just to say I study computer engineering and in Israel, in the Technion. And from the moment I remember myself, I was always curious. And if you ask what's leading me in life, it's curiosity. Why things work the way they work. Isn't it a better way to make them work? And when I was in the university, I was grateful to study in one of the top universities, and you're surrounded by super genius people that all the time solving problems. And from the get-go, the studies were interesting for me, but I bumped into different problems to solve. They're kind of fulfilling my destiny there. And one of the early problems was, how do I create a website in a few clicks? And that was in 2001 when we founded a product that is very similar to Wix, the website that we all know today.
So that was before Wix?
That was during Wix already existed, but we said, okay, let's build it on a super UX-friendly interface, which was Flash. I don't know if the audience here remember what is Flash, but it was deprecated after 1 or 2 years later by Apple. So already then, I realized that it doesn't matter who's the end client, whether it can be the developer, it can be a designer, it can be, you and me, normal people that, want to actively touch an interface. It's all about them. It's all about what is the experience for them and how we improve that. So just going fast forward, I sold this company after 3 years, founded another startup was really similar to eToro. With this startup, I learned the best lesson of how to choose my partners, because it didn't go well. And obviously, you need to choose a partner as in any initiative that you're building something and you're creating kind of a baby. So you need to make sure that the parents are suitable for each other and all compatible. Exactly.
What was the biggest lesson that you're drawn from this experience?
I think the biggest lesson was setting up expectations, which is kind of trivial, but you can set up expectation on a very shallow level, and everyone is telling himself their own story and present to you their story. Mm-hmm. But I learned over my career to listen more and more to the subtext and what people don't tell you, what people are. It's not, because at the end of the day, it's not what people are telling you, it's what they're doing. And if you discover a dissonance there, if you discover a discrepancy there, this is where you need to understand, okay, so I thought it's like that, but it's actually the other way around. And anyway, during my entrepreneurship experience, I started another company in business intelligence, and we sold it to Cloudera finally 2 years ago. I was in retail tech, and then I was a solo founder. I would not say that was the conclusion, okay, leave me with other founder, let's be a solo founder. But this, we call it in Israel, in entrepreneurship bacteria, really resonates in me as someone who wants to improve one's journey, one's experience, one's touching a product that is seamless for the end customer. And on the other hand, solve real problems that many times is in the pipes, behind the scenes, not always as visible as it is. Yeah.
So you actually came to conclusion that one of the most, I would say, lucrative and one of the most ambitious challenges are, I would say, not the most sexy one and not the most obvious, right? So they're the one that nobody wants to touch. They're very much unknown to most of the users and customers, but you are still love this challenge. So I want to also learn your thinking, the hierarchy in your brain. What happened when you thought, okay, well, now we're going to go and solve this particular problem? And how did you come up with the particular problem? How did you discover the problem with Lava Network?
Yeah, so basically me and my co-founder, we jumped into a crypto 4.5 years ago. It was NFT summer and there was a lot of excitement. I basically following crypto from the sidelines since 2013. I met Vitalik in Israel 2013.
Wow.
Never understood what he's speaking about. I understood he's genius, but didn't put my tokens on him, unfortunately. And in 2021, there was 3 different, very respectful entrepreneurs that see I've just sold my last startup, and they say do something in crypto.
Can you name them?
There was Dani Adlin and Itai Mellinger, good friends from Israel. They founded Curve and sold it to PayPal. Another one is the founders of Trucks Retail. They made the biggest investment round in Israel by SoftBank, $600 million in 2021. And they were my mentors and investors in the retail space with my previous company, SuperSmart. And the last one, which I think of him very highly, is my co-founder. Basically, we started a kind of a fintech, insurtech startup here in New York. By the way, if someone wants the idea, it's Robinhood for deposits. Okay, I can talk about it later. But then, we met this crazy investor, OG, that lives here and has a family office. And he told my co-founder, you can write code on someone else's computer. And my co-founder is a crazy. And then he got the talent of my co-founder. And my co-founder said, okay, I want to do MEV. And I was like, ME what? And I will never forget where I was, like in Portugal, on a balcony, looking on the beautiful Douro Valley. And I was like, crypto? But how come everyone's speaking to me about crypto? And this is where I fell into the rabbit hole and could never stop.
So that was kind of the beginning of the journey, right? So now let's talk about the way you position, at least the way I understood the product, right? When I was doing my research, it's like a Cloudflare for crypto, right?
Correct.
And in a way you provide a node infrastructure to solve multiple problems. But let's I would say deconstruct this, in a very
100%.
simplified way, so that imagine a 5-year-old will be able to understand. So let's talk about the problem. What is, in your opinion, the biggest problem you're solving at the moment, and why is it important?
So let me start with a question, okay? I guess you use Netflix here and there, right?
Yes.
So imagine you use Netflix, right? And
yes.
Netflix, wherever it goes, wherever you use it, doesn't matter even from different countries, as long as it's not prohibited there, you can access it, right? You can sit on your bed, you can watch it on and always the series, the movie is available there. So behind the scenes, there is this kind of, like Cloudflare that you mentioned, that is making sure that it's routing you in your computer at home to the server that has the movie available for you. If there is a lot of other people around your neighborhood that also asking for the same movie, it makes sure that it's routing them to, or increasing the capacity of all the users to see the same movie. And that's the unique thing about internet. In the internet, all the internet is well connected. So once you ask the movie from some place, you always get access to it. However, in crypto, it works a bit different. What is crypto? What is blockchain, basically? Blockchain is a set of computers that's speaking with each other and maintaining the same consensus. It's a ledger and so forth. But the computer, the blockchain of Ethereum is not necessarily connected to the blockchain of Solana, not necessarily connected to the blockchain of Hyperliquid, and so forth. So here, in order to have access to them, you need to run a node, or you need to ask someone who runs a node.
Of every chain. If you prefer to have multi-chain experience and get an application or anything, right? Whether it's, let's say, decentralized Netflix, right? So the problem what you're describing right now, that if I'm as a user, I would love to watch a movie, a decentralized Netflix on Arbitrum or on Hyperliquid, right? Something like, so I would need to run a node to be able to do that, because
to read the data.
To read the data, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So this is problem number one, right?
Yeah, and this is kind of the tagline of the problem. It's called access. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, every computational operation, it's out of the two. It's all read or write. I want to read information. When I opening my wallet queries the blockchain, and it shows you the account balance. It shows you how much money you lost today, and so forth.
Or gain. Hopefully.
Or gain. So, of course, we are positive here. I told you 4 years ago, Bitcoin going to be in 100K. But at the same time, when you want to swap, when you want to send a transaction, when you send, tokens to your best friend, like me, at the end of the day, you also need to query the blockchain.
Yeah.
So, people don't think about that, but every time they claim an airdrop, every time they were minting an NFT, so you interacting with the blockchain. And this layer of connectivity, we call it the access layer, was abandoned. When I joined 4 years ago, basically, I realized that there is an evolution. At the end of the beginning of crypto, once called Web3, there was Bitcoin, there was Ethereum. So if you needed to run a node, and you don't need to trust anyone. But then there was the proliferation of many chains. And today you see stablecoins, and you see RWA, and everyone has its own chain. And I think it's just going to be more and more. I heard some people saying it's going to 1 million chains. In each of them, you need to run a node and gain access. So it doesn't make sense. So then the second wave, it's when amazing companies like Alchemy, QuickNode, they came, infra, they presented a solution to that. They say, don't run a node, I'm going to run it for you. If you want to ask me to do something, to send a transaction or query information, just ask me to do it. But people in crypto, they know one of the three things: that you want to have privacy, you don't want to have single point of failure, and you want to have reliability, which means if I tell you something, that's actually from the blockchain. So what I discovered like 4 years ago is that everyone is using a few providers. They don't trust one. They don't just go to the top provider. Most of the providers are not even available in the nascent chains, in small chains that just started, right? So they have a fragmentation of dozens and hundreds and thousands of different node runners, and it just doesn't make sense.
Node runner, it seems like a creature from a fictional character. Like we need to write it like
It's like basically developers, developers.
No. I think it's an interesting way how you put it. Like so now let's unpack it for I was just thinking while you were looking at this. By the way, I'm an investor in QuickNode. This product and similar to Infura, I know pretty well. Now when I was investing and I was wondering, because I understood that yes, this is inevitable problem. You need someone, because even your explanation for retail investors who don't know how to run a node. I guarantee you.
But they don't need to.
Exactly. And they don't need to know, by the way, which is very important. It's similar to, do you really care how iOS is working on a back end? No, you use iPhone, you click 2 buttons and something magically operates. Right?
Did you ever hear about HTTP? SSL, you know which version of SSL your browser is supporting?
Exactly.
Why we need to do that? And that was my question that brought me to say we need to define a standard that give access to all chains and help developers, application builders, big exchanges, custodians, AI agents to access the blockchain. Without them need to run the nodes, and without them need to have this single point of failure problem, trusting a few providers.
So those are your customers, right? People who you work with. So this is like slowly getting us to who are actually using this infrastructure, because we're definitely talking about the B2B sector. So other companies who are doing this hard work using your product, which you're simplifying life for them, right?
Exactly.
And then they extrapolate it, and they similar to Cloudflare, for example, when I need to improve, I have Cloudflare, by the way, for all my websites, right?
Exactly.
Also.
Yeah.
And you have to, because I think it's important to also explain for a regular user, why do you need it also, right? In terms of security, protection, and as you mentioned, not a single point of failure, right? Can you elaborate on that?
So let's unpack those problems that we identify. What is single point of failure? How many times it happened when you coming to claim an airdrop and suddenly there is an error? How many times there was that you wanted to make a swap in your wallet and there is an error? I've seen also times that I'm just simply opening the wallet and there is no account balance. There were more and more cases of showing malicious information that you don't even aware of.
Yeah.
Which means that I hacked to one node and I want to present for you information that you take decision on them based on this information, but you don't know that the information is not from the blockchain.
Yeah.
So all of these problems together, we believe is solvable, okay? And that's what helped us to come with this idea of start building kind of we call it a decentralized layer, aggregating different providers and give the fastest, the most robust, the most performant, and maybe private access to the blockchain. And the end user, they don't care about that, because we like to say nobody knows RPC until it fails, and nobody cares about that.
Let's also elaborate what is RPC for people who never used it.
So I will come back with a question. What languages do you speak?
Do you mean linguistically?
Yeah.
Five.
Language of
Different. Right now we speak with you English, right? And I was born in Ukraine, as you know, so Ukrainian, Russian, French, and a few others. But
so RPC, remote procedure call, is the language of blockchain. Every blockchain define the way that you can communicate with. You can send a transaction. You can ask, you see this wallet address. What is the account balance there? I want to know information in the specific block in the blockchain. So those are sets of APIs, basically, that you can communicate with the blockchain, and it communicates back to you. So we like to think about that this is a language, and every blockchain has a different language. Obviously, you know that Ethereum is based on EVM, so all the rollups on Ethereum, they have the basic EVM APIs, but then they add more APIs that are relevant for them. And yeah, when you think about how do you communicate with the end blockchain, you need to know the language of the blockchain.
So you think about the Ethereum layer 1 is one language, Ethereum layer 2 is dialect in a way.
Nice. It's a good. In the Middle East, we have a lot of dialects. So.
And then think about it, then Solana, completely different language, right? I don't know, Cardano, Tezos.
Russian, Ukrainian, you have...
Exactly. So you are the one who is automatically almost like this, a new aggregator / agent that automatically translates these languages, make them work together, and make sure that not only you understand each other, but also any query, right? That it's actually conducted in a way that you can trust the system without even questioning it.
Exactly. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. What if I build this amazing DEX aggregator, and suddenly there is a new chain, a new L1, a new L2 that's coming up? How do I start communicating and providing information from this new chain? And until we were at Lava, you basically needed to find those providers. QuickNode that covers a handful of chains. They don't cover all the chains. And then you go to this chain and you start asking the foundation, who are the best providers that I can trust, that when I have 10,000 users per second, all of them will get service. And this problem is also what we're tackling. Because with Lava, you have a single endpoint and you can go to any chain you want. So what Lava is doing is inviting node runners like QuickNode, like ChainStack, like Alchemy, to list their nodes on the Lava layer, but also inviting some developers that invested all the last years of their life in a specific chain, and they know the best how to run a node. they can monetize their node by listing that on Lava. And
how would that work? Let's say, because this is the monetization part, I think, is one of the most important incentives in the decentralized world.
We created the marketplace of data. So if I'm a node runner on Near chain in Japan, and I have a few nodes I'm running at home, you basically can come to Lava and list your node as an available node RPC on Lava. Inside of that, there is a few other criteria, whether it's historical, archival. This defines how much information he wants to serve this kind of node runner. And then basically, every request the Lava layer is receiving, we're routing the requests to the node provider that excel based on the quality of service. So imagine so this node runner in Japan is listed on Lava, and you, Constantin, you are traveling to Japan and you're opening your Near wallet. So once you open the Near wallet, your Near wallet obviously is connected to Lava. And at this point of time, when your wallet is querying Lava, Lava is looking for who are the providers around that can bring you this traffic. This is how the routing works. And he found that the Lava layer founded this developer that's running the node, that listed the node. Then you communicate directly. You're not communicating through the Lava chain because we want to make sure that you have the fastest, the most reliable service. If this node, this guy just is down and his node is not accessible, we automatically having a list of other provider that will always be available for you if such a thing happens.
Similar to CDN, right? So basically
that's Cloudflare work, exactly. Yes. That's a CDN concept. And just to finish the flow, so you communicate, you ask for the information, you see the account balance, and let's say you don't need it anymore. Once you're done, automatically the wallet using Lava signing the transaction, it's behind the scenes, you don't know that, and give it back to the provider. Why? Because he sending the session, I just provided service, he sends it to Lava, and at the end of the month, he receives service based on what he actually did.
So I think one might have another question to you, which is basically like a basic, I would say it's a psychological challenge, right? So for example, Near Foundation, in your instance, that you provided, it's already a reputable player. People at least know about it, trust it, even at least in the crypto ecosystem. So someone might ask, why should we trust Lava as opposed to Near directly going, right? So this is another thing, maybe you can elaborate on this part.
So Near don't run the nodes themselves. I want to simplify that. So there is two ways to do that, two players, okay? One is when you don't have a lot of requests per second, basically you don't need enterprise-grade service. And second one is when you need the enterprise-grade service. So let's say those are the two options in the market. The first one, Near and every foundation out there that's representing a chain, providing a public free endpoint. And this public free endpoint, basically you can query up to a certain limit, and you cannot harass it with 10,000 requests per second, but this is enough for those users. The second option is Fireblocks, is Kraken, is any stablecoin company that needs these hundreds of transactions per second. And they want to get a reputable provider with an SLA, and they want to make sure that they're 100% uptime. Okay? So back to your question, at the end of the day, a foundation it's not like you're choosing the Near foundation or you choose Lava. Near is explicitly sharing those are the endpoint available for you to use the service. And Lava is one of the endpoints there.
Who are your biggest customers as of now?
So I want to talk a bit about the evolution, what happened. We started with, as I mentioned, with decentralized RPC. And we onboarded dozens of different applications. Back then it's called decentralized app, right? DApps. Because today they don't care about decentralization anymore. They just care about the application and they have real use case and they have utility. So we onboarded dozens of different applications on dozens of chains, from wallets, dexes, lending protocol, many different apps. But then the foundation came to us, and Near was one of the first. And they said, basically what you do is a public good. Because like in contrast to other provider that I give him, this is the money I gave you, that's my infrastructure budget, run it and make sure that everyone, the application building on top of Near. Near can give the same budget to Lava, and Lava distributed that to providers based on the quality of service. And then we see this move of different foundations that's starting to ask for the same product. That's how Lava Pools product was born. Basically, Lava Pools is every foundation can define this pool, put the infrastructure budget, and make sure at the end of the day, he gets the best, the application building on top of the chain as the best service and access to the chain. That's the second evolution. The last evolution, I didn't forget your question, is where we are now. One year ago, Fireblocks reached out to us and they said, it's really nice what you do with RPC, thank you so much. But because it's open source, they see that there is something in the code that they said, can you wrap it as a product? And we were like, what do you mean? Like, what do you need? Because Lava, it's a network, it's a free access, it's an endpoint at the end of the day. That's what developer wants. But Fireblocks say, yes, but we want you to wrap it as a product that we can use on the backend. And this is when the smart router start. We just published that in the last 3 months, and we already have almost a dozen of installation using the smart router that's proprietary developed inside Magma Devs. So I'm super excited about that.
We all heard like one of the craziest thing like that happened like recently with Trump, for what it takes, you can take it as a whole. There's the good things that happen and there's other things that are very challenging to accept. One thing that happened with him, he promoted heavily his Trump meme coin. And then obviously there are a lot of nuances, but I know, do you have a special story related to it? So okay, maybe can you elaborate on this?
So basically I learned it post-mortem, but basically Trump meme coin was one of the most congested events, especially in the last year in Solana. Mm-hmm. And Solana nodes is a very heavy lifting process to do, because the way it works with proof of history and all the architecture. So it's consuming a lot of resources to run nodes. And what happened is that you had the elected president of the United States suddenly coming up with a token. With a meme.
Not very suddenly, but
in 3 days. Okay, 3 days, yeah, not very sudden. And everyone wants to buy it, obviously, right? So what I learned afterwards is that when I got a call from the CTO of Fireblocks, and he said, listen, during the Trump meme coin, we had a war room that we needed to bring billions of dollars to buy the meme coin from our customers. Because, Fireblocks at the end of the day, they represent thousands of customers. Yeah, and they're doing as non-custodian, as MPC, right? So they're managing the keys, but the volumes are insane. And in Trump meme coin, you have a crazy traffic in a matter of minutes and seconds that wants to go and buy and trade the meme coin. Mm-hmm. So he said that they had a war room, and they were seeing how the smart router is basically giving them 100% uptime, moving between the different providers, that all the providers were down of Solana. All the RPC providers were down during the Trump meme coin. And it shows how, on one hand, how far are we from a stable architecture, a stable access layer that's always on. But on the other hand, for me, it's see how much potential we have in what we're doing.
It's actually very interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember that time very well. I was in Davos, World Economic Forum, and my friend calls me and said, like, Trump just launched a meme coin, like literally, don't think buy it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
exactly.
I was shocked. So, I was not following this news, like, so he's like, did they literally trust me, bro? One of those conversations. Yeah. And by the way, I missed it, right? And so my other friend
you missed losing.
No, I in a way, I actually bought Melania.
Okay.
Ironically. And I sold it in the next 6 hours and forgot about it. So I was happy about it. But what I was trying to tell that I know exactly from a user perspective what happened.
Tell us about
that. Yeah. So I was in, Soulflare, right? So you just, and I think
that usually works, right?
Yeah, usually works perfectly. Like, and then I was trying to buy it, and 6 times it was failing. because of the problem you're talking about. And you see, I didn't know what it was actually. I thought, okay, well, the nodes are down, whatever, just like maybe too much demand.
But you are an OG.
Yeah.
How is this experience to someone that first time coming to the industry? He wants to buy fucking something and he cannot.
Yeah.
How do you explain to him? For you, this is what is crazy. For us with the salt and pepper that already have been through some things here. But when we go back to the Netflix example, you will not accept it.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to go to HBO. You're going to go to another, imagine your credit card doesn't work when you want to buy for our steak last night,
No, I think crypto, for what it takes, like we're still very early in the stage of user adoption, user experience. Go to even Phantom Wallet, which I think on Solana, arguably one of the best. Like, seriously, I would say that my experience with them was only positive. And even Phantom Wallet failed. But again, now we know that it's just not because of them, it's because of the nodes provider. So
exactly. And nobody cares. You remember, nobody cares about RPC until it fails?
Exactly.
That's the moment.
So now explain this, like what did you do to make it happen?
Me, I didn't do anything. But our community, our amazing community that was building in the last 3 years, they basically built a routing software that allow Fireblocks at this point of time to say, look, there is a congestion on one node. Before it's down even, move it to the next node. And when they see that this node might be down, they move it to the next one. They use also caching, because it's not only the transaction, it's also receiving the information that based on them, the wallet is doing the transaction, right? It needs to calculate gas fees and stuff like that. So, and if it doesn't have a parameter, the transaction fails.
How fast is it happening?
On a millisecond.
Millisecond.
Wow. And the latency is super important because you want the last price. You don't want a price that pumped in 5 minutes, right? And again, in Solana, because of the architecture, it's even more problematic, right? So just to simplify that, imagine that you have not one node, you have a set of 10 nodes or 20 nodes that always gives you redundancy. And that's what we solve for Fireblocks. So after this event, all the tech team asked for us to do a presentation about this product. And then they decided that they roll out Lava exclusively to every chain that they support. And that was the moment of the third evolution, third phase of our journey in Lava. And especially in Magma Devs, we said, this is something super interesting. And I'm sure Fireblocks not the only one has it. Yeah. And this is basically a new category. It's something that all the enterprises are doing, but none of them knows that such a product can solve the nightmares.
So basically, we're talking about the multi-chain solution without the migraine and the pain in the neck, right? That can actually work seamlessly without anyone knowing how it works, right? So again, let's talk about the next level of where you go into. Are you talking about like working eventually, like, also bridging the gap between, let's say, centralized, like solutions to DeFi solutions, maybe integrate with like Google, AWS, etc., right? What's the next level?
So I think I can give you a sneaky peek, and you're the first one publicly that I can disclose that. But I was 2 weeks ago in MIT and with the Media Lab. And what I can say is that we are in discussions with the professors there to define a better access layer or a standard for the industry. And this is one way that I'm very excited about. Another way is that in the last few months, since we announced the full integration with Fireblocks, is much more custodian, banks, stablecoin issuers reaching out to us and mentioning we also have the same architecture, the patch on patch that we built basically because we're forced to build it in the backend. Can you solve it to us? And it's insane to see how, because of the special architecture of how crypto is built, you need access to multi-chain. So you need to build a semi-smart router by yourself. I want to take this burden away. I want to make sure that you as an end customer who buying any crypto, any meme coin that you would like, you're not bumping into a bad interface and into a bad user experience. I want to make sure that when the customer Fireblocks moving billions, they have always performant access to any chain. I want to make sure that when a wallet wants to integrate a new chain, it doesn't need to think about the node level. And I know it's one of your next question, but when AI comes, this is even more bigger, this problem.
So that's what we were talking about before in terms of AI. Like now, let's talk about a little bit like what's the agentic problem that you can solve also, because we talked about it before, privately, but like I don't think people understand how fast this evolution is coming. Like, inside we are, some people say 5 to 6 years to AGI.
Yeah.
And then this problem with the computational need to grow will increase, and there'll be no time to build this infrastructure, even if you have unlimited resources, right? People will need to have already some like architecture that are proven by fire, right? So you already have this experience. But before we jump into it, I want to maybe specify something. Like, let's imagine, do you have any competitors? Let's say someone wants to build, a big corporation wants to copy you and build something similar. Is that even possible, and how fast?
We raised to Magma Devs $15 million. We built it in the last 3 years. I personally work with the smartest people out there, from professor in Stanford to game theory experts to security experts, and we really gather an amazing team. Everyone who wants to do the same, good luck.
I love it.
It's a big problem, and I always believe more in collaboration. So there is a lot of problems to solve once you solve the RPC problem. What about indexing? What about oracles? Obviously, AI agents and MCPs. They need to define a better standard. I gave you an example what I discussed in MIT with Sandy Pentland. He was telling me about this case in Stanford that they're trying to define the intents of AI agents. And I was like, yeah, I know what intents, but can you elaborate? He said, there is no way today. So you said AI agents, right? But at the end of the day, the AI agent is going to represent you. They're going to represent you by what time you want to meet your friend. They're going to represent your grocery list and what's actually you have in the fridge. It will communicate with your wife about when to pick up the kids, if you should do it. Or this is how, it's a futuristic world that we live in. But when is the intent, what is their intent and who defines that is a big problem. It means that when I give $10,000 to my AI agent, I want him to invest. How we make sure that we define the limits of how much we want to lose or how much crazy or risky he will get. When we kind of allocating to our AI agents to make Amazon purchase for a dress for next week, how we make sure that it doesn't buy the most expensive one, okay? And these kind of standards are also becoming more and more important, how we define and quantify them and limit them and give tools to the companies that will build on this infrastructure to evolve. And yeah, when we talk about standards, I'm personally really excited about how those standards will fit in an agentic world. Agent, and just one more thing about that. Agents don't sleep, they don't drink coffees, they're not interviews for podcasts. They basically 24/7 need access to blockchains and to anywhere else. And the more interesting stuff is that they don't use UX and UI the way you and I use. Everything is interfaces.
Algorithm.
It's the back end, and they think a million times faster than us. So
maybe soon it's going to be quadrillion.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is scary in a way, right? Because then you have to also think about other, deterministic problems, which is, we're going to leave philosophy, but let's talk about the RPC. This is a language of blockchains, right? In a way, right? So your product cannot completely solve the holding problem, because there is other problems with nodes like that. You can find a better version of a node, right? They can kind of be an alternative provider to make the transaction happen, right? But you cannot solve all the known problems. So intrinsically, some of the blockchains will probably also die off, because you're talking about, okay, there are going to be millions. Do we actually need millions? That's another question. If AI, let's say there will be like AI of AIs, and it will decide to create more efficient blockchain, right? And it will decide that this is going to be from now on the number one blockchain, right? No, you with the product you're building will be able to serve them more efficiently because you already know how to at least like in a very efficient way to, I would say, unite all the other, as you mentioned, like the languages, all the other like already systems and APIs together, right? So that's another thing which I think not many people understand how important it is, right? It's basically you're creating an agentic finance, like, that's the new layer that will define like the grammar for the language. Is this correct way of thinking about it?
You can think about the blockchain like a city.
Okay.
Cars, pedestrian, buildings, like wallets, exchanges, and AI agents. And I always give this analogy. If the routes are not built, if the highways are not there and there is no good infrastructure, the city is gone. You cannot go and visit your friend. You cannot go to the supermarket and so forth.
Or you can, but it's not convenient.
No, you don't have routes. So how do you, the roads are not built. So that's why we always say Lava own the roads that's powering all the infrastructure of a city. So it's like a backbone, but it's, it's super important because without them, you cannot exist in a city. Yeah.
That's an interesting comparison. So you're architecting right now the future roads of agentic like interactions, right? It's
going to be in a bigger capacity.
Exactly.
Because we say next year, 70%, according to CZ, 70% of the transaction will be done by AI agents. And
it's huge.
This is a big number. Yeah. And how do we allow that? So I see these trends in different exchanges now that is going and tackling more. I'm not going to trust only a single provider. I want to also run my own nodes. And I see a shift for that, like running their own nodes. But the same problem still exists. They need to maintain 100% uptime and access for their customers because they don't want to be in a problem next week that, one customer asks for a deposit or withdrawal and, they cannot serve it.
I think it's a very interesting dialogue because you see, you prefer, like you would prefer to run your own node. And like you understand this world. Right? Like I'm the kind of person who's like, I would prefer not to run my own node. I would prefer to trust someone to take away the burden.
But that's right. But in 3 years, I believe with AI, you don't even know what's a node.
Of course.
Like even we want to be the best friend of the DevOps, the best friend of the CTO. Give them eyes towards the infrastructure, because in most of the companies that we're speaking with that needs enterprise grade service, the CTO doesn't want to tell the CEO that he might have downtime. And today, the way he doesn't have a good tools enough to assure that in the next product launch in rural points, like user will not get access for the product and they will have downtimes. So this is kind of it's the first time in my life that I'm trying to build a standard, aggregating different parts, different components and across the entire industry. But at the end of the day, tackling a very simple problem and a problem that every one of us here that's listening or, watching, like at the end of the day, we use this layer every day on a daily basis.
Just but we don't,
and we don't need to know about it.
Yes.
So we're taking this burden away.
And that's, I think, worthwhile to talk about a lot of other like challenges that happened recently. For example, one of them was Polygon. We know the proof of stake. The slowdown. It was like it was very brief in July 2025, but basically a validator issue created in 1 hour disruption. And by the way, I remember that as a user.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and you look at this, you think, okay, well, I really respect Polygon. Sandeep, they've been, I have some
Sandeep
Polygon members, like Starknet incident that happened in September 2025. By the way, all of the near Starknet, Polygon, highly respectable foundations, and they're pioneers in a way.
Yeah.
However, as a user, you see halted transactions. You start understanding that, oh my God, can I really trust the layer one, right? So, and that's a very bad question to start asking yourself, because then it basically erodes the entire level of what you were talking about depths, right? So So what's built on top of them? If you cannot trust the foundation layer, how can you trust everything else? It's like a house of cards. So then maybe you can reassure us a little bit more. What are you guys doing to make sure that like it will happen less and less?
So you touched a very important topic, and the topic is trust, right? When I first jumped into the crypto and the rabbit hole, they told me don't trust, verify. But you cannot verify everything. Correct. At the end of the day, you trust your bank because you're putting the money there. You trust the credit card that it will go on. You trust your car that is not going to explode. But especially with money, especially in finance, in the next finance revolution that we all experiencing, the trust is even a more dominant factor. And we see what happened like 4 years ago in the last 4 years actually, when we see this collapse of different institutions from Terra DPEG to FTX, Celsius, all of these incidents that took the trust away from people. There is a comparison to what's going on those blockchains, right? That you say suddenly, they halt. Or as a user, I'm like, there is a specific time I cannot withdraw my funds or swap. But I'm going to give a better optimistic view on that because I think the industry is maturing and converging into its next step. Remember that every techie product will not get to the end users until the infrastructure works seamlessly. Mm-hmm. Usually, and we see that also with AI, you needed to build the best GPTs there, right? The GPT-5, which is like 10 times, 100 times better than GPT-1. You need to make sure that it doesn't cost as much as possible, although OpenAI wants to invest $1 trillion, I can't even say the number, $1 trillion in the next few years. So we all hope it's not a bubble that we live in. But you need to build the tools for the end user to enjoy. And that's where you see a very crucial point in any industry, in any product. You see a product market fit that's starting to emerge. And this product market fit is in the shape of stablecoin, is in the shape of our RWA, and it's the shape of, just sending transaction to another wallet based on, for example, with intents or near, without the need to think, oh, just a second, I'm on Arbitrum, I need to send you, as you told me before, I need to send you USDC, which chain I'm on? Like, what is the thing? I want to send to Kostya. Can I call you Kostya? Like, I want to send to Kostya, just as like money on the stake last night, right? So how do I do that without going through the burden of understanding in which chain do I live? Once we solve these problems, a set of new applications can emerge that are basically user apps for their convenience. And I think we're getting there. And it's not what I think. It's based on facts, If I will tell you there's going to be a big market for stablecoins, Walmart, Amazon, Stripe, everyone, 4 years ago, you will tell me, well, what are you talking to me about? It was non-existing 4 years ago. And it created like billions of dollars market from nothing. That's the pace that I like in crypto. And that's the velocity I'm looking for when I'm building a product.
Yeah, now look at this, like a stable coin is growing and growing, and like PayPal now, like already very active in the space. A lot of like traditional companies, like seriously issuing like more and more stable coins. So this
but also you said incidents, like with PUSD, with of PayPal, the fat fingers, how much? 500 trillion printing money. Like you see that the accident can happen, but only in a very early industry, this scale accident can happen by fat fingers.
Yeah.
Right? And yesterday we spoke about this kind of, where regulation and compliance jumping in order not to slow the horses on the one hand and give innovations the right wings. I like always to quote Peter Thiel that he says, once regulators are talking about innovation is dead.
I think we maintain a very healthy equilibrium in the United States. It's not perfect, far from being perfect, but I think that the capital the talent here and the understanding that you have to merge the two to get a synergetic effect and to actually not to slow it down is at a very good level.
But it's just in the last 1 year, like the regulator here and our big friend,
Yes.
Gary Gensler, he was like basically trying to kill a lot of these companies. From Paxos to Coinbase to that. So there was existential threat about that.
Correct.
And like, I'm super glad that we passed that. Nobody knows in which bull or bear market we are at the moment. But, keep on building.
No, 100%. I think we're in a we're honored, and I would say I'm honored to be in this stage where we are. And I think we have to be incredibly grateful that, like, despite all the other differences that women have on the political realm, like, it really doesn't matter. But what we see right now is at least a government that understands that, okay, you give all the opportunities to people who are into AI, to people who are into blockchain, like people who want to build the finance of the future, right? The next level. And you see that when you have more than 55 million like people who use it, people who actually have wallets, who vote with their money, I think there's a huge difference in the understanding that these people actually decide not only based on like different policies, because money is one of the most existential, you mentioned this word, which is very close to me, like, right? It's an existential important tool where how people decide. If they control their money, if they can trust the institutions that are either proliferating the change and making it better, cheaper, faster. I mean, we look at Texas right now. Now they're going to be having like, this 24/5 exchange, right? And then NASDAQ is going this direction.
Yep.
And soon, maybe within some near time, we're going to have 24/7 exchange.
Yep.
And again, the fact that they will be also powered by this infrastructure, they will allow not to think about the interoperability, all these fancy words like which blockchains, like that'll be the next level of consumer adoption.
Yeah. By the way, to your point, whether we early or not, you know how many people are holding crypto in the world? I was just reading that is almost 1 billion.
I'm not sure it's very accurate. What do you mean holding? Because
billion that had interaction with crypto.
This is the 500 official numbers. I know this numbers, okay. 580 million. Because a lot of there's a challenging in calculation.
They don't know what's crypto and they don't know what's Bitcoin.
No, there's a lot of people who, let's say, can generate 10,000 wallets, right? So do you count it as a one person, or do you count it as 10,000 people?
Yeah.
The official stats, like what I've seen, like it's still 7.8% of humanity, of people in planet Earth, which is not even 10%.
Yeah, but it's still a lot. You see, we've been together to Korea.
Yes.
And we see that almost 30% of the population is holding crypto.
Yeah.
It's like your grandpa, your grandpa, they're holding crypto. But those are very extreme like population, They are gamblers and they're like maybe innovators by themselves.
It's also a very culture phenomena, what I found.
Exactly.
Korea is a very unique place because they heavily promoted this. They tried to proliferate digital innovation, which is very, like, I think, very synergetic to what crypto and blockchain is trying to do. Mm-hmm. Like, while other countries, they actually try to slow it down because for them, and if you think about autocratic regimes, for them, the digital innovation has a very different goal. For them is to control. If you look at China, like why they do stablecoins, because for them it's like further controlling the population and any movement of the money. It's not because they want to help people to have a distributed ledger where they can hold
the CBDC,
money.
That's the thing.
Exactly.
That's the same.
And I'm very happy that in United States we have a very healthy, again, equilibrium between the private sector, which issues the stable coins, and it's not fully controlled by the government. It's a very unique experiment. I don't think people fully appreciate this. Mm-hmm. And I love what you're building because you will allow these different stablecoin issuers, which are private, not necessarily connected to each other. You eventually, from my understanding, will allow, let's say, PayPal, PUSD, to transfer to USDT seamlessly. One click, doesn't matter which chain, and it's guaranteed by Lava Network.
Power the rails.
Yes.
Power the rails. Exactly.
And that's, I think, is incredible already, like contribution to the humanity, what you're doing. I want to do the closing part, very like a fun one. We do Blitz. So you're not allowed to.
Oh my God, Blitz.
You're not allowed to think a lot.
Bring me back to the World War II. Yeah, Blitz. No, not the same Blitz. Okay.
No, not the same. Again, intuitively answer fast. Okay. You choose boring, invisible problems. Why?
To change the future of the end user.
Most painful outage you witnessed.
AWS last week.
Okay. What kills trust faster, slow or silent?
Silent.
Multi-chain should feel like
Inevitable.
agents break because of.
Lack of infrastructure.
In 10 years, will people talk about lava or will it become so invisible and dependable that they will never even know it exists?
If they're smart, they know, but smart investors. Otherwise, they will never hear about that.
Love it. I have one last question, which is more of a personal question, right? Which is about you. I know what we do things for a particular purpose, right? So I want to know, what is your purpose and what's your meaning in life?
I believe that, on your deathbed, you will not regret because the time goes only to one way, and you know that you don't have much time. But what you will do is look at the mirror and say what legacy you left in the world. And probably my legacy and my purpose in life is to incite people, make them excited about a specific direction, and help them work as a team in order to solve them. So I'm a problem seeker and a problem solver, and I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And I think in a few years' time, I know exactly what I'm going to do, which is not in the infrastructure world. That's my gift for my future self. I want to dedicate myself to a problem that I see when I'm traveling all over the world, and going to bring my resources, understanding, learning, and network in order to solve that.
I love how you're already thinking about the next problem, right? So you want to solve this one, and then you're thinking about. And I love that you're very selfless in this, right? Because what you're solving is actually not a lot of people will know exactly who is solving this. They will use some of the B2B partners of yours, right? But they will have ideally seamless user experience, which will save them time, money, and headache.
Exactly. If that's my 2 cents for humanity at in this era of my life, I will look for the next job.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your team.
Thank you.
And
it was amazing.
I sincerely wish you all, success, right? So that you will be solving the real problems for billions of people.
Let's make infra great again.
Thank you.
Thank you.